Healing Steps to Wellness. I'm Dr. J,
And I'm May.
your trusted guide to whole person health, one step
And one bite at a
at a
time.
time.
So it has been an honor to welcome former President Jonathan Nez and First Lady Phefelia Nez as our guests today. Your presence is truly a gift, and we deeply appreciate you sharing your inspirational story, personal stories, and health journey. That transformative change is happening within also in the Navajo nation. So, Jian Yu, do you want to go give you a short intro as well?
Yeah, thank you. We first met President Ness and First Lady in our annual symposium in April. So before we start, I would like President Ness and First Lady to have a introduction.
Well, thank you for having the both of us on your show, your podcast. And, we live in Flagstaff, Arizona, right outside of the Navajo Nation. We are below one of our four sacred mountains, the San Francisco Peaks. And, we transitioned out of Navajo Nation government a little bit over 2 years ago. We were in public service for over 20 years. But before that, we were going to school here in Flagstaff, Northern Arizona University, where we both met. And we took on the challenge of our elders. Our elders would tell the youth to go get an education, get the experience off our tribal lands, and to come back and help. And we did just that for over 20 years. And my lovely wife here has been an instrumental part of our success in government. And now we're in the private sector. We run a business, Nez Consulting LLC, and we're still helping out other tribes, not just Navajo. We were in the Winnebago Nation in Nebraska a week ago. A couple months ago, we were in Montana and also in Wisconsin. Of course, the event there in Minnesota. That was a great event. Appreciate the opportunity there, and thank you for the invitation. And let me turn the time over to my wife as well.
It's good to see everyone here again. Yes, that was an amazing symposium. Learned a lot, and it was really nice to hear from all the presenters. But yeah, in addition to, we just dabble in a lot of different fields and topic areas doing consulting work. But of course, one of the items that we absolutely love in doing is everything in the health and wellness arena. And this started as my husband, when we did our own transformation in our own family, and then of course just carrying on that work through the different roles that we played in our communities, and then now in the consulting side. And so it's just really amazing to get go into different communities and really to find people who are championing the cause of making, wanting to bring to just with the goal of healthier families. And so that's something that we want to see, especially for our future generations.
Great. So May and I actually went to University of Arizona. Wildcats.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's where we got married. But when we were there, something we won't have there for 1 year, initial 1 year, we didn't really pay much attention to the Navajo Nation, to be honest. So why don't we start from what was the traditional diet of the Navajo Nation?
Well, today, the Navajo Nation is 27,000 square miles. It's about the size of West Virginia, and we have over 415,000 enrolled members. Of course, that's a lot smaller in land size and in membership than it was, pre-contact from European folks coming to this country. Our traditional diet was mostly farming, right? You may have heard of the Three Sisters, corn, beans, and squash. Of
Yes.
course, wild game. And a lot of gathering as well, gathering of food and also medicinal plants. And of course, then there was contact, and the diet changed a lot, especially when this country started to relocate indigenous peoples in this country. Like for the Navajo people, we were relocated to a reservation in New Mexico. They call it Bosque Redondo. And we were herded together and taken on a trek over 400 miles. And we call that time a sad time. It's called the Long Walk of the Navajos. We were able to sustain life there in Fort Sumner, Bosque Redondo. Of course, we had our legacy seeds that were handed down from generation. We had that when we got to Bosque, but the soil there was too much, and plus the isolation of the people, and we weren't able to grow our own foods like we used to. And so the government came in and they gave us rations. I call them rations. They make you might hear about it as the commodity food program or the food distribution program today, but just like I said, the food was given for sustenance, and it wasn't the most healthiest foods for our people. And today, that same program is still being run by the federal government. And today, it's a lot of processed foods and really unhealthy foods. But we are making an effort to let the federal government know that there should be more healthier foods, especially if they're provided from the federal government. But on the other hand, we are reinstating or re-educating our folks to farm once again, and to also share that produce like we used to do before contact. And I think there's an opportunity here for indigenous foods to be shared with not just Navajo people or indigenous people, for all people in this country. Tribal leaders, I always challenge them that we have an opportunity here because there's a big demand in fresh produce, the non-GMO foods. And guess what? The first foods of this country are probably the most healthiest foods that anybody can eat. And I see it to where one day tribes will be able to produce fresh fruits and vegetables and have it in our supermarkets on our homeland and surrounding communities, and to share with our non-native friends the delicious recipes that have been handed down for generations, especially when it comes to plant-based dishes. Phefelia, you have anything to add?
Yes. So traditionally, I think the other aspect to native tribes is, growing food, harvesting food was always a family affair, right? A whole community affair. And it was something that was celebrated communally. And it's so at a very young age, I think children grew up just knowing where their food came from, and how was where it was sourced from, and then of course how to prepare it, and that it's always shared. And so over time, we've lost that concept of our connection to food. And now it was like a lot of going to the supermarket, to the convenience stores, to the fast foods, to the restaurants. And so we're trying to, I guess, remind people, wait, you gotta think a little further back. And, this is really how, if you want to create community, a lot of that can be created around food and just the celebration of, just good health throughout the course of a lifespan. And so that's something that's always it's very interesting topic when you talk about with people, to kind of remind them of that. But really children, I think, and I always think if you can do it at a young age and to do it as a family, that's something that will stick with them. And then if they do the peer-to-peer, they have a lot of influence over their peers, amongst their peers. And so we've seen that with our teenage son, and it's a back and forth. They get to learn from others, and others learn from them.
Okay, I want to jump in, comment before May does, because
Okay, I'll let you have it.
thank you. Because I grew up on a farm, a poor countryside, so I could relate to some of your experiences. That when I was growing up, our food, we sometimes we didn't know what we were going to have for dinner, because my mom would send out my brother and me. We just go to our farmland and just see what we could find. Some harvesting, some we found the wild animals. I don't want to say what they are now, but we just gather and a little bit of hunting, whatever we could get. And it turned about the Western, we received a lot of food support from the U.S. government. Like my father's generation, they will have the flour bag, the white flour bag, the old cotton. That was the best clothes they have at that time. So they will make that into the undershirt, underwear. My mom liked to joke that whoever behaved would get the underwear with colors. The American flag or writing that was color. You had to behave to get that. But anyway, I'll turn it to May.
Well, that's interesting. Well, Jen, I didn't know that part of a story, after how many years, 30 plus years of a marriage
the
together.
secrets are coming out today, right?
So, well, I think I pick up something very valuable right here. And Phefelia, you mentioned about the connection with the food. And that is through the farming. So the kids now not quite know where the food's from, because it's just a fast food, a lot of engineered food. So that kind of helped me related to our pharmacy RX and community garden. Right next to our clinic, Rochester Clinic, we had an opportunity during the pandemic time to make the green lot into a community garden, and just allow people to come outside, be able to plant some, produce, and give away as well. But the important thing is people connect together and be able to see from the beginning to the end of the crop growing and harvesting and celebrating. That is such a joyful experience. And by the way, our garden is spelled as a FARMACY prescription RX. So we give away the produce to our patient as a prescription as well. So it's kind of interesting to hear the background and how the tribe traveled from Arizona to the New Mexico. At what point of a time you realize that something got to change? And I know you also involved with the work with PCRM, the Physician Committee of Responsible Medicine. Please share with us about that.
I think initially that work started with them partnering with a Navajo Nation program and really just disseminating information more about the nutrition aspect when you're talking about overall health. Right? Just really going after nutrient dense foods. And then for us, our involvement, I think it came from just knowing the numbers, the data that we have for chronic diseases across Navajo Nation. And really the aim, I guess for me, I've always, the platform that I had was, it was focused on families and children. And when you're talking about children growing up thinking that it's just normal to have somebody in a family dealing with diabetes or heart disease, obesity and cancer, and that's really something that affects them more than they probably know. And so when we talk about healthy families, healthy communities, healthy nations, this was something that we really honed in on just because of that. We want to see our our communities thriving generations from now, like 100, 200 years from now. And
Mhm.
so that was always the aspect that just really motivated me.
Mm.
Well, let me also add to that. You know, we were in office for over 20 years. I was a lawmaker of the Navajo Nation Council, a couple of terms or a few terms, became the vice president of the Navajo Nation and then the president of the Navajo Nation. So we were able to work with Dr. Bernard at PCRM, and when I was vice president. We had a transformation in the house. Of course, I lost 100 pounds. I was 300 pounds. If you get a chance, those of you that are watching, Google Navajo Nation. Um, um,
We have the link.
Special
We can
ideas.
put a link on
yeah,
this podcast. Yeah.
re the yeah, where there's a video there that shows a 10-minute video
Mhm. Very
reclaiming the
beautiful.
plate. Thank you.
Yeah.
And yeah, get a chance. It gives you a story of my own
Mhm.
personal transformation. 100 pounds, getting called out by a young person.
Mhm.
Why are you telling us to eat healthy and be active? And yet every time we see you, you're just getting bigger and bigger, right? It didn't
Mhm.
make sense. And I got called out, and that's when I started changing my own life. You know, I took control. I lost 100 pounds, started running. And and at that same time, we partner up with the PCRM to get more information out to our Navajo people.
Mhm.
Carolyn Trapp at the time coming to Navajo. We had Dr. Bernard come to Navajo just recently, a few months ago here to the Navajo Nation, the Hopi tribe, and you know, him as a physician, focusing on plant-based really supplements positively of what we've been talking about retaking your health, eating more plants, more veggies, and fruits, and how you could reduce or even reverse diabetes. You know,
Mhm.
diabetes is not, I say this respectfully, not a death sentence, right? But in
Mhm.
our culture, I think some of our people think once they get diabetes, that's it. You know, no, it's
Mhm.
not. As we know, we can be
Mhm.
able to reverse that. And having Dr. Bernard um, talk about that to the Navajo people while we also translate that, you know, I think it's gone a long way. I mean, there's a health and wellness movement throughout
Mhm.
Indian communities and the Navajo Nation. Because of what I went through personally, you know, I think it affected how I governed
Mhm.
during the time I was in office, and more
Mhm.
health and wellness
Mhm.
events on the Navajo Nation, focusing on farming and gardening happened.
Mhm.
We had a
Mhm.
first ever junk food tax that was ever put in place, and that money is being utilized to fund health and wellness projects on the Navajo Nation. You know, commercial tobacco ban in public and government places. You know, really just been a focus on health and wellness during our time in office, and I think people saw that. You know, there was one, and I'll stop with this one. Is I even at one point, believe it or not, banned candy from being handed out at our parades on the Navajo Nation. Very controversial, and people were getting mad at me about that. But I think it had a larger
Mhm.
um, effect on our people because people were talking about their own health.
Mhm.
I was saying we spend tens of thousands of dollars on buying candy and handing them out,
Mhm.
but at the same time, we're advocating in Washington, D.C., saying give us more money because our
Mhm.
diabetes and cardiovascular disease. It just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And so we banned candy, and then instead of using those tens of thousands of dollars on purchasing candy, we purchased fruits and vegetables from our local farmers.
Mhm.
And then we handed those fruits and vegetables out to our community members during the parades, during our events,
Mhm.
just like we would do candy, but it was a substitute, but a more healthier thing to do. And today, our Navajo people demand from their government more healthier foods.
I think you have very good point about the candy. I think the food industry doesn't want to talk about sweets because they are afraid of the A word, the addiction. You talk about the alcohol, the cigarettes, all of that. You also mentioned about physical activity. All those beyond the nutrition is a whole lifestyle, six health pillars. Are you able to go into detail more on the besides the food, whether you have other pillars besides the physical activities, alcohol, like that, other pillars like stress management, social networking, like that?
I think one of the things that was also instituted during his presidency was the wellness policy for all employees of the Navajo Nation. But really beyond that, we've been tackling. I mean, we in partnership with PCRM, we've also tackled, getting tribal voice into the U.S. dietary guidelines process for the 2025 to 2030. And so when I mentioned earlier, the commodity food, right? The USDA program. But I mean, the U.S. dietary guidelines sets the policy for what can be ordered through federal programs. And if you go on any reservation, we have federal boarding schools and whatever is ordered there for the cafeteria for the students to eat, that sets the requirements for those. And then you go to senior centers, the same thing there, and the WIC program, and then of course the food distribution program through the federal agencies. And so that was really neat to work on that whole process. And one of the things that we found out through that is, number one, Native Americans were never invited to the table to be a part of that process. And a lot of other agencies and departments, they do tribal consultations. That never happened with the U.S. dietary guidelines. So we have to basically go into different tribal communities and make them aware of the process. And then, of course, have them advocate for better foods, what they want to see on there. And in that process, I think it was a learning experience for us too, to really get to see, what the indigenous foods were for other tribes and which ones they still utilize and which ones they would want to see being able to, for schools or for the WIC program, for any of those programs to be able to order and to provide to their native or into their tribal communities. And so that was that's a work that I think I'm so proud of. And, we want to see more Native tribes involved in that process going forward. And so that's something I wanted to add.
And let me just also say that there are some great things, as my wife mentioned, great things happening in tribal communities. They're retaking their health and they're wanting to, fulfill the ability to govern themselves in terms of better health and better foods in their community. We were just in Winnebago Nation in Nebraska, and there it was a focus on early childhood education. And we had the ability now to say, okay, we all recognize 0 to 5 years old is the most critical time in a person's life. We need to not just be reactive with the health problems in our communities, but to be proactive and start planting the seeds, if I may say, and those 0 to 5 children to eat better and to re-educate them on our ways. And that's just not just health and wellness, it's also language and culture and tradition. And, I think that's going to be an impact for the future for Indian country as a whole.
So
And
how difficult it is to do the whole food plant-based nutrition in a Navajo Nation or indigenous population, and also how close the whole food plant-based diet now close to the traditional Navajo diet.
Right. I mean, it's hard. There's only there's only 14 supermarkets on the Navajo Nation, and it's the size of West Virginia, right? As I mentioned. So how many supermarkets does West Virginia have? It's more than 14. So we're a food desert.
Mm.
But we could say, oh, well, there's not that much healthy foods. In a way, it could be a blessing too, because we can encourage our people to plant those seeds that have been handed down from generation to generation. And I can guarantee many families have those seeds either sitting in a closet somewhere in their home. They just need to get out and plant it. I understand water is life, water is needed, but you have the Hopi tribe right in the middle of the Navajo Nation that is expert in dry farming. So we can be able to plant fruits and vegetables. And people do, don't get me wrong, people do, but we just need to get our young people to recognize that that's an important part of our culture and our way of life is having crops. Phefelia and I, we grew up with cornfields, and we have animals that we took care of, and we still do today. Back then it was like, man, it was tough to as you know, Doc, tough to have a farm or a garden. It's labor intensive, but yet it is better for the health of the family, and also you get to share that produce with other families within your village or within your communities, which has that interconnectivity of culture and tradition. And I think when we are slowly returning back to that, maybe more so now with this administration that's in Washington, D.C., with the big cuts that are happening. And I think it's upon tribes now to say, hey, we can start doing things that we used to do with like our ancestors did for many years before us.
Well, President Nez and Phefelia, you are truly a great example of phenomenal leaders. You are very positive to take any kinds of, say, uncontrollable challenges, but you turn into the opportunity to make it very positive. And that you also mentioned that it's an opportunity to force yourself to spark anything you can do, trace back to what your ancestor did in the past, and that's collect the seeds back, that's do things ourselves to be sustainable. That's the message I get. And I also realize that now you have your own consultant team and you travel a lot. So can you share with us what is your mission and what you try to accomplish in terms of, from, the Native American cultural standpoint, what you try to accomplish?
I always say it's probably trying to conduct a paradigm shift. I mean, most people would be like, no, that's going to take generations. But I think really it's something that, one thing that's really good about Native culture, Native peoples, is that we're so adaptive. And that comes, I guess, that we see that as an opportunity to, educate and bring awareness on just a variety of issues to just tribal communities across the US. And this is just one of many. And then, of course, to bring in the skills and the knowledge and the partners to assist in some of these projects that we see, that we can envision for them and with them. And so that's something that we've always enjoyed doing. And then just as he mentioned, just that statement on sovereignty, right? The ability to make your own decisions about just anything, what rules you want to, just how you govern yourselves, just even in, I always say, you don't have to have like a position, you don't have to have some title to feel like you have the power to do those things. Just being a mom, just being a dad in a home, you have the power to, influence especially when it comes to nutrition and foods for our children. We have the ability to do that. And so just to bring the knowledge and the information to parents and grandparents, and hopefully they will, institute those changes within the walls of their own home, I always say. And I always think a lot of things start at the micro level, but it needs to have that information, resources, and support coming from, external support systems.
Agree.
We've been in government for over 20 years, so we built a network, not just here in the area, but all across the country, like with you all and PCRM. And we are now that we're on the private sector side, we're able to, educate people about the great things that are happening in Indian country. Because I think there's a perception that, oh, those are poor Indians, poor Native Americans. They're put in reservations and they have bad health, alcohol, all that. And it gives us an opportunity to push back on these stereotypes in our communities, especially when it comes to food. I think what we found out as we travel the country is that people don't really know much about Native American indigenous foods or the indigenous recipes. And as you know, we did a video with our good friend Chef Sean Sherman, and even just sharing recipes with others, people are like, wow, that's a great tasting dish. And of course, Chef Sherman has, as you know, a Wamni there in Minneapolis. We ate there. It was great. Appreciate the chef for being hospitable, the great hospitality from his team. But he's also doing great work all across the country, all over the world. And I think it's just upon us as Indigenous leaders, not just to shy away after you get elected and what do they call it? Go out to pasture, but to go out to pasture, but to actually still be engaged. And that's what we're doing. We're helping anywhere we can. The examples that we have done on the Navajo Nation, we shared it with other tribes, other communities, and then vice versa. There's some awesome things in terms of food sovereignty that we're seeing in tribal communities, from the Shakopee Nation to the Ho-Chunk Nation, all the way to Winnebago, Karuk Nation in California. We were able to visit a lot of these tribes and to see what they're doing, and they're retaking their health, which is very encouraging and very inspiring to us, and inspiring to all, I'm sure.
Great, thank you. So I have two questions for you. First one, no, we just talk in private. We don't need to share. How genuine is Chef Sherman's recipe? But we love the Oami restaurant. How genuine is the food? And secondly, our annual symposium, we like to talk about lifestyle medicine, how they improve the health of overall population. And what do you take away from our April event, how they connected to your mission and what you're doing right now?
Okay, so to your first question, just his restaurant, and then of course the ingredients that we could bring into doing our video, and his Native American tribal indigenous food systems, their indigenous food lab, right? They only use and source ingredients that are pre-colonial. And then if they're going to put any type of meat in their meals, it's harvested sustainably. It's not coming from some animal, just not a what do they call? Not like a beef lot or something like that, where they don't use any of that. And so a lot of it, and it's just really neat to know that every bowl or every plate that came before us, they explained what was all in there and where these items came from. And so it was really educational experience, and just really, it's just so flavorful. And then of course, when it came to doing our own recipe over at the Indigenous Food Labs, it was the same thing. They looked at the ingredients and they substituted items in there where they needed to, for items that are, that they would use in their own restaurants. And so that was amazing. Now, the second part to the takeaways from the symposium, that was something for me. It was like, oh, this is something that would be so amazing to do, in different communities, just to bring information like that from just very knowledgeable presenters and the focus on the overall wellness and health of people. And just everybody brought in their own, their own little bits that went in there. And so that was pretty neat to hear from some of them. Some of the presentations, I don't think I've heard, like the one on the energy, right? I mean, that would resonate with any indigenous person. Yeah, because I mean, that's something that's just a part of a lot of our cultures and the way we, our environments are structured, in our mind. And so it was just amazing to see all of that. And it would be nice to really get some of those information and to share it with our Native peoples.
I'm so glad
Yeah,
to hear
And
that.
it's all,
Arizona.
yeah, it's all about building your network, as you know. And we were able to, share information at the symposium, and we are also grateful for the many folks that showed up to share what they're doing in this country as well, because now we're informed, because we still sit down with leaders like Secretary Kennedy. We met him down in Phoenix when he was meeting with the tribes, and what we were saying is that there's a movement happening in this country. Of course, it started a long time ago, but it's just getting even more and more into the local communities. And with your help, getting a network of folks together to share what they're doing was very powerful. And I appreciate the opportunity. We appreciate the opportunity to speak and also to hear great things that are happening in those communities.
Yeah.
Well, I really, one thing I do want to mention before I forget is your documentary, 10 minutes of a documentary. We definitely need to put on the link on this podcast. It's so inspiring. We have heard so many comments about, how they feel so encouraging when they hear your personal and community-wise health transformation. And secondly, I think Phefelia probably reflected to the panel discussion that where we invite the local some organization leaders and to discuss how they conduct their wellness and create their positive wellness culture within their their workplace or the community, or even do something to the community. And when we talk about lifestyle medicine, as you mentioned, you also emphasize a lot on whole person approach. There are several health pillars, not just the food, but also yours, the spirituality, the stress management, and the connection. And I hear person that you mentioned that several times, the connection, people and to the food, that all matter. So I think we probably in a community, I feel like that we all are doing something, but it would be wonderful that we can make the the 6 health pillars that we promote as a foundation is called so-called lifestyle medicine spectrum, that be able to have that as more of a big highlight or a checklist for people for any organization to remember, we have done this too, how about the other? So we make sure to be more inclusive in all the wellness aspect. So I have to say that it was such a gift to have you both here. And then because we also learned about the 3 sisters, we try to honor your presence here. So our chef team at a conference also purposely to bring the 3 sister ingredient together to for people to come to make their own healthy bowl. So we definitely looking forward to seeing you again next year, because we cannot get enough from you still.
So I do have a very important question. Now, as soon as I knew that we'll be interviewing you, I have had this question in my mind for weeks. And the question is, what is the best squash for the three sisters?
Good question.
I'm a little biased. I'm going to say Navajo squash.
Oh, what is a
But-
Navajo squash? What does it look like?
Yeah, it's a larger version of a squash that you would get from a supermarket.
I think it would be that blue Hubbard squash. That's my
Oh,
favorite.
Blue Hubbard.
Yes.
We do plant that, right?
Mhm.
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay.
we do. They're away from the corns and beans, though. I need to move them.
Well,
We still can move our plants around in our garden yet. We do plant a couple corns, and we have beans. And
Mm.
thank you. I think I learned about what I have in mind. The beans is different from the actual beans. What I have in mind is like black bean or red beans, but actually is the long
Like a pole
green
beans
bean.
type they can climb.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we plant three sisters this year in our garden. Well, Jen, would you
Well-
like to, do you have a more question?
I do not. Well, I do actually. So, President Nez and First Lady, how would people get in touch with you in terms of community projects or having a needs for your consultation?
Right.
How do they get in contact with you?
Yeah, they can contact us through Nez Consulting LLC. We're also on all the social media platforms, and our handle is former Prez with a Z Nez, former Prez Nez. And yeah, we also have a podcast. You know, when we were there in Minnesota, and at the conference, you know, we had Chuck Carroll
Yeah.
interview us.
Interview.
Yes.
We're gonna have Chuck on board, and maybe we can have both of you on board. That's gonna be our next episode. I know it hasn't. There's a big gap in our episodes. We've just been busy, but we're gonna be bringing Dr. Bernard on, Chef Sherman on, make it maybe hopefully I can get it all in a 30 minutes episode, and yeah, talk about health and wellness, talk about plant-based foods and dishes and how we can learn from one another. So yeah, just and I'm sure our information will be on this segment.
Yeah.
So yeah, contact us, you know, if you have any questions for us, or if we can be of any help in any of your projects, you know, we'll be happy to.
Absolutely. We'll be more than happy to interview with Dr. Chef Sherman at his kitchen.
Yeah. Please, next time when you visit Minnesota, let us know. And so we'll be happy to meet with him as well. Because actually we went to his restaurant eat once, and it was presented beautifully.
Oh,
The
yeah.
dishes. Yes,
There
we love it.
there was some good dishes. I
Yeah.
don't know if I should say this on this segment since we're focused on plant-based.
No,
but
that's okay.
We're
Go
not-
ahead.
Yes,
Go for it.
There was a cricket
Yes.
popcorn in there too. You know, for Navajos, we used to cook chini
Oh, the cicadas?
cicadas.
Yeah.
And that's how we would get our protein too, you know.
Yeah.
So
Actually, we tried that dish, the cricket. It was
Okay.
crunchy.
it was crunchy.
Yeah.
I think Phefelia had one of the little teeth little legs in her teeth.
Oh. Yeah, it was. But you know what? When we promote the whole food plant-based nutrition forward the nutrition, that in any given environment, that you pretty much do your best to gather the ingredient whatever you can get, and kind of to be mindful of the well-balanced nutrition. So
yes. And the
yeah,
nutrition,
yeah.
health, and also the environment. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So, well, we definitely would love to have you back, because we still have a tons of questions that we can't wait to hear more. I hope you can, consider to come back to our show again. So at this point, we really appreciate that you joined us on this healthy steps to wellness.
Well,
Dr.
thank you
J.
for having us. Yeah, thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us, and keep up the great work that you all are doing to promote plant-based foods and also health and wellness. So appreciate the time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So so I'm May,
Yeah, I'm Dr. J.
and we are guiding you toward whole person health, one step and
One bite at a
at a
time.
time. And
And
see
we'll
you
see
next time.
see you next time.
Thank you.